words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So I'll share my God moment of the day with you since it's already happened. That's a good thing. This morning I'm driving here to work and processing this sermon one more time, going through my head, and I always listen to Krista Tippett, who has a great radio show on NPR in the morning, on Sunday mornings called On Being, and she talks to religious leaders and preachers and theologians, and today was a Jesuit spiritual director. If you don't know much about the Jesuits, they often talk about Ignatian spirituality. Ignatius of Loyola was a Spanish knight who in the mid-1500s founded the Jesuits. And their spirituality flows from this idea that we can see and communicate with God in all things. You might experience God speaking to you through the sunset, or through a conversation with a loved one, or in worship, or in nature, or animals. And I realized just kind of halfway down this conversation, almost past the golf course on Stevenson Lane, that I've forgotten something pretty important for this day. And so I decided to turn around, and I'm going back up there. He's talking about seeing God and all things and nature. And so I look to the left, and there is a red, gorgeous fox posed on a stone fence who just kind of cocks his head over toward the road in my car, and it's like, "Good morning." And I was like, "Really? Really?" And so I go and get what I need and turn back around and make it on time and get back. And sure enough, 3 houses down there he is. He cocked his head back in the road like, "I'm good one." I was like, wow. God can just show up wherever you are, interrupt your day, even when you thought you had it together, you need to turn around, and God shows up. So if nothing else, take that with you. So on to the sermon that I was rehearsing in my head before the fox told me good morning. Are you the one to build me a house to live in? Those are words of the Lord spoken to his servant David. It's time for the Lord to settle down. No more of this traveling around with the ark and pitching a tent every time the sun sets. I suppose that's why I chose the word build a month ago that I wrote about in the cover of the December newsletter article. It was going to be the word for this sermon. Maybe because we're moving ahead with plans to rebuild a house with Habitat for Humanity. That's what I was thinking. Note to self, never give yourself a word to preach on 4 weeks ahead of time, because it becomes very difficult. Because we rarely remember, when it comes down to it, these words of Samuel, or David for that matter, on the fourth Sunday of Advent. This is Mary's day. Who wants to be married? Now, if you've ever tried to direct or cast a Christmas pageant in a church, everybody wants to be married. Everybody. My last church, St. Margaret's in Annapolis, with lots of kids. It was a political decision one had to make. Sometimes there was lobbying by the parents behind the scenes. It was a very big challenge. Everybody wants to be married. But did Mary want to be married? I think that's a key question from the Gospel of Luke. She's just hanging out. She's sewing a dress, eating her dinner, maybe planning her wedding, looking through magazines, and suddenly the angel Gabriel shows up, interrupts what she's doing, and says, "Guess what? Your life is about to change. You will conceive a son and bear him, the Son of God, and you don't even get to choose the name." Now, Mary was, depending on your chosen translation of the Bible, much perplexed, greatly troubled, thoroughly shaken, or confused and disturbed at what this angel had brought to her. She started thinking this announcement through. So Mary asked the next logical biology question: "How can this be, dear angel? I have no husband." Angel says, "Now we've got that all taken care of. As proof, just go talk to your cousin Elizabeth. Nobody thought she could get pregnant, and yet she's 6 months in. I'm being asked to carry God's Son into the world. Not so sure." This is the moment no one speaks of, when she could still refuse. A breath unbreathed, the spirit suspended in wait. Did she have a choice? Could she have refused at that moment? Would she have refused? Everybody wants to be married, but at that moment, the moment when the weight of the world is teetering on her shoulders, this moment when God waited to hear from this young girl, this moment of confusion and expectation and joy and hope and the honor of it all, what will she do? So we all have those images of what we think Mary looked like. We've brought all these nativity scenes from around the world, and they all have different depictions of her. I always set her up on the right because I think that's the side she was on. She's small and demure. Most of the ones I see show Mary bent over in devotion, on her knees with this look of saintly pleasure, holding her hands in prayer or raised in adoration. Surely it's meant to depict her meek and mild nature. Now, I've seen lots of nativities in my lifetime and collected many of them from Honduras and Mexico, even seen teddy bear nativities, don't have one, don't want one, don't bring one, rubber ducky nativities. This morning I saved the best for last though. Doug wouldn't let me bring it in until today. It is a moose nativity. A nativity enacted by a herd, or I found out a fangle of moose, you call them. Mary is this outrageous depiction. She is exhausted, spread out on all fours, looking worn out and relieved. All of these characters have shown up, interrupting her plan, and all she wants to do is be by herself. She was just a plain old moose minding her business, and then her life is turned upside down. Now this is more like it. If God came to you or me, do you think we'd be sitting piously with our hands folded? Doubtful. To bear God into the world takes gumption the size of a moose. It takes courage and passion. It takes momentum. Mary's not meek and mild. She may be young and faithful and pure, but she is a woman of great courage. When the angel Gabriel came to Mary, she didn't cry, I cannot, I am not worthy, I have not the strength. She didn't submit with gritted teeth, raging, coerce. Bravest of all humans, she consented, and she was illumined. Her life interrupted, but she said yes. A comparative religion professor at Harvard Divinity School a few years back said her students often asked her how they were supposed to explain the missing years on their resumes when they were applying for grad school or for jobs. They wanted help explaining these interruptions in their life on paper. She told them to be honest about the gaps in your life. Tell them I took in a child whose mother was in prison. Tell them I battled an addiction and I won. My husband was killed unexpectedly and I tended his grave. My marriage made in heaven disintegrated. I took photos of skulls left by the Khmer Rouge. Tell them those things, the actual things that have happened in your lives. She said the gaps on the resumes are the abysses into which we fall from time to time, and in the process fall into the loving arms of the living God. Our lives are constantly interrupted. We have our day all planned out, and then we realize we forgot something, that our child got sick. We're on our way to a job interview and we get a flat tire, or we're buying a new house for the family and realize we need another room for grandma. We're busy with the stuff of life when other stuff happens. Like the professor said, those gaps open up and drop us into the hands of none other than the living God. When God interrupts Mary, God promises it will all be okay. I'm with you, God says. You can build me a house now. I am staying. I am coming to be among you, and I am staying. Yes, Mary, I know this stuff is way scary, and you didn't plan for this. I am with you. You didn't plan this illness, nor did God, by the way, but it'll be okay. You have a choice of what to do. But if you say yes, I will be with you. You didn't plan this move or this mountain in front of you. You now have to climb, but I'm with you now, even to the end of the ages. That is the point of Christmas. Emmanuel, God with us, even to the end of the ages. So, who wants to be married now? Maybe she's disappointed in the way she's portrayed, or that she's portrayed as a moose, following behind Joseph on the search for accommodation in Bethlehem. Maybe she's silent and acquiescent, letting life happen to her. I don't think that's the kind of woman she was, though. This year, she wants her voice back, so let's give it to her. Her voice among the prophets of Advent, embracing all her courage, passion, and grace. Today is her day, and this candle burns for her. Not gentle Mary, meek and mild, but Mary running along the road to Judea, making noise like a moose, running, not walking, because she is young in body and soul and spirit, with an excitement in her heart she cannot contain. We need Mary to come running into our churches and our lives with that hope and excitement of the birth of Jesus. We need to be Mary, because Jesus is coming to be among us, Emmanuel. We still have time to build him a house, my friends, because he is staying. Amen.